Chaf Aleph. Din Torah biblically. So Suffolk Mamzer Mutlav Makal, a person who's a Suffolk Mamzer, because let's say example, his father fathered him through a woman who was Suffolk Megureshes, for example. Mutlav Makal, he may marry into the Jewish community. Shemar, it says, Liav Mamzer Makal Hashem, a Mamzer may not marry into Kahal Hashem, meaning to a regular Jewish person. Mamzer Vadi Aser, which means the pasuk implies, according to the Rambam, a definite Mamzer forbidden, Love Makal, Well, Suffolk. But to Suffolk, it's permitted. That's not Torah. Av Chamim also Mal Yuchs the Chum in order to improve Jewish lineage, but also Gamasvekas Love because they forbade the Suffolk Mamzer also to come marry to Jewish people. Therefore, Mamzeres Vade definite female Mamzer, Modalisa Mamzeres Mamzer Adois. Sorry, I missed it over here. I'm sorry. Yeah. So, for example, a definite mamzer can marry a definite mamzer. Aval mamzer Suffolk a shtuk yasufi, but a doubtful mamzer or a child who we don't know who the father is, a child who comes in from the marketplace, we found him abandoned. We don't know who the mother or the father is, and all these that means he's a Suffolk mamzer. Also, Lisa Basisol is forbidden to marry a regular Jewish woman. Chav Beis. Also, Lisa Mamzeres, he's also forbidden to marry a definite mamzer because maybe he's not a mamzer. Even a doubtful mamzer, he's not allowed to marry. So a doubtful mamzer cannot marry a doubtful mamzeres. Shema echad mihen edi mamzer. Maybe one of them is not a mamzer, v'hasheni mamzer v'ali, but the other one is a mamzer. Mamzer shel devreim, a rabbinic mamzer, mutal lisa mamzeres shel devreim, could marry another rabbinic mamzer or a mamzeres. But again, if it's a suffix, they can't marry each other because one of them might not be a mamzer. Cases, for example, a child doesn't know who the father is, a child who's collected from the marketplace, abandoned child, or a suffix mamzer, may not marry each other. Notice if they do, they cannot stay married. They must divorce with a get. If they do father a child, the child is a doubtful mamzer like his parents. These no, we said not.
Which one?
Yeah, and Chav Beis. That's exactly what we're saying. We said earlier, a child who's found abandoned in the marketplace. Collected. No, that's a shtuki. That's a shtuki. But these doubtful people who don't, it's a suffix, if they're moms or not, there's no way to them, they can't marry anybody. Again, the only thing to do is marry a ger, because a ger can marry a Jewish person or a mamzer. And again, the child goes after that blemish, she's also suffix mamzer. Case of example of Dalit. Shtuki Ayasufi, a shtuki or a sufi who marries a convert or a free slave, which is like a convertess. Or a ger mishul chorish noser shtuki asufis, or a male convert that marries a female shtuki asufi. Havala shtuki asufi, the child is considered a shtuki asufi, the same status of doubt as the parent. We don't know exactly what his lineage is, if he's a kosher Jew or a mamzer. Now, what exactly? How do we determine if the child who's collected in the marketplace is kosher or not? Usually, we have a doubt and we say he's not kosher. But we'll see there's certain markers that help us make a decision. A child who's gathered in the marketplace, an abandoned child who's in a city that has goyim. Regardless whether the majority was even goyim, but there are goyim living there, he's a suffix of chamazolis. We consider him to be a doubtful Jew. He may be a goyim, maybe a Jew, and therefore we're supposed to megayer him. If we don't, but kiddush, if you give someone kiddushin, she's a get from a suffix. Because again, he may be Jewish and she might be married now, or he might be a goy, a child who is abandoned and we collect him from the marketplace. Misha Roga, someone who kills this person who's gathered in the marketplace. Hey, he's not chayiv nisa. Because the din is, if a yid kills the guy, the yid is not convicted of the death penalty. He's chayiv malchus only. Therefore, you can't kill him if he murders this person. Maybe the person is not Jewish. Chavav. Now, if the Bezin tayvels him to be a Jew, this child, we don't know who he is. We tayvel him, we give him to a Jewish orphanage, like we're supposed to. Or he should probably he tayvels himself in front of Bezin when he gets older on his own. Then we consider him to be a standard Asufi who's collected from a Jewish marketplace, because maybe
opt out by his government.
That's a whole other question over here. But again, this child could not, because he might be Jewish, right? And
so he goes back to suffix.
Yeah, so back to suffix status. He may be a mamzer.
Only if he opts out.
He may be a mamzer. He may be a kosher Jew. He may be a ger. There's three possibilities. And if the majority of the city was goyim, we can be semach on the rave to feed him. Again, we have to be worried he might be a yid, but we're allowed to feed him non-kosher food. Again, we're talking about a case where he hasn't been converted. So you can't, if you have to chosh, you might be a yid, but as far as the idea of feeding him non-kosher food, that you can go bust a rave. The majority of the city was Jewish people. Then again, not only obviously you can't feed non-kosher food, but even monetary halacha, you have to be worried he's a Jewish person, you must return his lost object. If the population is 50-50, you have 100 Jews, 100 goyim. Mitzvah you have a mitzvah to sustain him to the level as if he's a fellow Jew. You can be Mechal Shabbos to uncover an avalanche to save him because he might be Jewish. But when it comes to damaged properties, for example, if his cow gores your cow, then you say, prove to me you're Jewish and I'll pay you the money. If you're a guy, I don't have to pay you. The halacha is if a Goyish person's cow gores a Jewish person's cow, that he's not mechuyev to pay. And therefore, prove me you're Jewish and I'll pay you. Chav Zayin. Someone tells you that's anti-Semitic, that's Jewish racism against Goyim. Tell them that if a cow that belongs to the Beis Hamikdash gores your cow, you also have to pay. So it's a special day. All right, Chav Zayin. The Rambam says, it seems to me, which means it's not clear in the Gemara, it's Rambam's evaluation. Any Medina, district, or state that has a non-Jewish woman or maidservant who is able to give birth, in theory, since the child that we find over there, the abandoned child, we're doubtful if he's a goy or a slave or if he's a kosher Jew. When we permit him to marry a woman who converted, as we said, we say that we let him marry this woman, but because we don't know if he's really Jewish, again, the case over here is that we were not Megayer him. So he's allowed to marry we said a Sufi is a suffix, and we go after and therefore he's allowed to marry a Sufi is allowed to marry a female convert, even though there's a chance he might be a guy. The halacha is we permit him to marry a female convert. So, but then she is a doubtful married woman, because if he's a guy, the marriage is obviously a void. A guy can't marry a Jew; it's impossible. Because if someone has relations with this married woman, we cannot kill him. She ain't hurting us herself. You can't kill someone out of doubt. So therefore, even though we said he's allowed, we let this abandoned child. We assume he's we don't know if he's a mamzer or kosher. We let him marry a woman who is a convert because of the possibility that exists. Technically speaking, he's a guy, even though the majority of the city is Jewish. Because he might be a guy, we cannot execute him or his wife or the person who has relations with his wife out of doubt. It seems to me, a shtuki, someone does not know who the father is, who marries a woman. Again, we said he can marry any woman who, let's say, for example, a Geiris. He marries a woman. Who in theory could be an Arab with him. Again, she is a doubtful if she's a married woman. She ain't kedushin tevsim barayis, because the halach is if a brother, for example, gives kedushin to his sister or his mother, the kedushin has no impact. And therefore, when this person who this shtuki, for example, meaning there's a single girl, we ask who the father is, and she says he's kosher. We say he's a kosher Jew, so he can marry another kosher Jew. But if he marries somebody who theoretically could be his sister, right? He gets older. Who's his father? No one knows. He marries a Jewish woman. Technically, maybe his father-in-law is his father. Maybe his father was the one who was with his mother. We don't know. And therefore, if he marries this woman, then she goes with somebody else, prove 1,000% beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's not his brother who she married, and she's not a married woman now. I mean, sorry. Prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the man she's married to is not her brother, and therefore she's mukadeshes. You can't prove it. You don't know other way. And therefore, you can't kill them you can't execute them based on Eish. Now, why do you let them get married in the first place? If it might be brother and sister. Good. So in theory, they can marry anybody in the world. We'll see in a second why the Rambam says so. Who is a woman who we say that theoretically they're everyone with the other, and the whole marriage is really a joke. Called any woman who he wants to marry, whose father was alive when he was born on planet Earth, could theoretically be his father, right? Therefore, anyone he marries could be a sister in theory, theoretically. Any woman who was divorced or widowed at the time as well. Any woman who was anyone whose father was alive when he was conceived, excuse me, not born. Any woman whose father was alive when he was conceived, and any woman who is unmarried when he was conceived, that woman could be his sister as well, because maybe his father also fathered her. Why does he say divorced or widow or not single? I don't know. Chavtes. Now, if this is the case, why don't we say we should say the logical conclusion is that any woman whose father was alive when he was conceived is possibly to be a sister. You can't marry her. Says Rambam, no. Why do I say that? Why do I say that we don't say that he may not marry anybody who theoretically could be his sister? Why? Because the Gemara says if a kosher woman and we ask the mother who is the father, if she says that he's a kosher husband, he's not forbidden on any woman who might be in erev with him. We say the mother says, "Listen, I'm a single girl. I messed around. I'm telling you the father is a kosher Jew. He could marry whoever he wants. That's the din." But that's first of all. So we see the Gemara. But now, if we see the Chumash as well, it says, "Don't." The Torah says, "Don't profane your daughter to marry her, to let her sleep around." If you can let your daughter live with multiple people, you know, prostitute her out to make money off her, I'll say it's going to be a churban. People are going to marry their siblings. Now, if you would argue that the halacha should be, or that the halacha is, should call me any day of a anybody who's not absolutely certain who the father is, also may not marry any woman who theoretically could be their sister. This wouldn't be a problem. The problem of people marrying their sister wouldn't happen. If you marry your daughter out, if you prostitute her out to make money off her, make sure that those kids don't marry anybody whose father was alive when she was doing this. We don't say that, obviously. The fact that's what the Torah is concerned is that you don't go so far as to say that she may not marry anybody who's alive at the time he was conceived. You don't assume people are also on each other, makes them arayas out of a suffix. Unless you know conclusively that this is an erva, such as a sister, a woman who may not a forbidden relation, like a sister, for example, or for that matter, any chi of karis, but in this case, a sister. If you say this, if that be the case, all the orphans in the world who don't know who their fathers are, could never get married. Maybe they might get an erva, and we know that's not the halacha. So we have a tradition that's not the din. So therefore, we don't say that he can't marry anybody who theoretically could be a sister. We say he could marry her, and if she is unfaithful, we don't execute her because theoretically, maybe she's not really married to this person because her brother and sister. Lamed. A child who's found on the road, abandoned. One guy shows up and he says, "He's my child. I gave him up. Now I want him back." The point is, I gave him up, and that he's kosher. Now, when he's believed, the mother's believed was also. However, once the child has been collected and established as an asufi, and then the father and mother come and they say, "Who is our child?" Anyone they're not believed. Once we gather him, we collect him and put the sufi tag on him, so to speak, that doesn't go back. However, if it's a year of famine, then when they are believed, just like before he was collected, they're believed after he's collected because it was because of a famine that they gave him up. They want other people to feed him. That's why they waited until he was gathered in, given a bottle, and then they come forth and they say that he's ours. If we find the child was abandoned, he's circumcised. He's been salted, or he's been given makeup, or different things that were done to kids back then to improve their health and status. Like nowadays, you would say he's given whatever they give over in the hospital. He has. Sorry, Huchtal meant he's bundled appropriately. Yeah, exactly. He's been given the makeup or any kind of amulet, like a Shermalas card. Yeah, the subach, or he's found, for that matter, in a tree, in a type of surrounded tree that's like a very bushy. The animal cannot easily go there. It's close to the city. Or he's found in a shul, which is near the public domain. Exactly, a strategical place where the child's protected and hopefully found and cared for. or near the Rosh Hashanah, and Kamashim Sufi. We don't say he's not a Sufi. We consider him a kosher Jew. Since the parents are obviously trying to protect him not to die, the Chassid should kosher. We assume he's kosher. Because if he's exactly if he's kosher, if he's a mamzer, if he's found abandoned in a way that's not safe, or far from the city, even on the tree, or in a shul, which is considered a public place, not near Shushabim, or a dangerous place. It's an abandoned place, so it's like a shul in the outskirts of the city. Or he's found hanging from a tree in a cradle, let's say, but where a wild animal can reach him, he's a Sufi. He's called an Asufi, a Suffolk mamzer, because maybe they weren't careful to protect him because he's a mamzer and they don't want him not so interested. Exactly, 11 base. The midwife is believed to say, Zah ben Kohen hu a Levi a Nasan mamzer. This child is a Kohen, Levi, a Nasan or a mamzer, because there's no status yet. We don't know the status of the child, so she's believed. When do we believe the midwife? When she has been established as believable and nobody ever protested her status or her believability. However, if one person protests against what she's saying now and says either she's lying, she's not believed. But the child is considered to be kosher, but he has no status as Kohen Levi. So in other words, she's believed if no one else is contradicting her. If someone contradicts her, we believe them over her. Davar butter. It is an obvious thing that two children who don't know who the father is cannot marry each other. Two children who are gathered from the abandoned marketplace may not marry each other. Because again, they are Suffolk kosher, Suffolk mamzer, and they cannot marry each other because maybe one's a kosher Jew, maybe one's a mamzer.
And they're Suffolk siblings too.
Exactly. That's another. But to that we're not cheshish what we said. But a mamzer vadai. Or a Nas in that nation that are converts from Yeshua Ben's times, they can marry each other. A child is mamzer, a shtuki, a child who knows the mother, doesn't know the father, and a Sufi who doesn't know who his parents are, they cannot marry each other, but they could marry Ger, or the nations of Gerim called the Sinim. Again, the child is the same suffix. Is he a descendant of Gerim, or he is a mamzer? He is a suffix. That nation, the Sinim of the nation, Yeshua ben Nun, converted. They came to Yeshua ben Nun in the when he conquered Israel. They pretended to be from far away. They're called Yevonim, and they fooled him, and they